Armenians have inhabited the homes of their forebears for centuries, regardless of who has ruled the contested borders in the Caucasus to Anatolia. Their distinct language and Christian faith has always distinguished them from their neighbours. In 1915, under the pretense of World War I, the Ottoman Turkish government set a policy of systematic extermination of the Armenian race to ensure that the Armenians would follow in the footsteps of their many persecuted peoples and prevent them from establishing an Armenian nation-state on their native lands. No less than a day later, after beginning of what would be referred to as the Armenian Genocide, the Anzacs landed ashore at Gallipoli. Anzac prisoners of war witnessed firsthand the execution of genocide, the death marches, the killing fields, and the concentration camps from Deir ez-Zor through to the rest of the Middle East. They scribed their testimonies, and these Gallipoli veterans were among those who played an instrumental role in providing humanitarian aid to the Armenian and Assyrian refugees fleeing in 1915. The main theme of Armenian modern history has been the struggle for survival against the encroachment of bad actors. Gegham Stepanyan is the human rights ombudsman of the Republic of Artsakh. He details from the ground the real challenge for survival against the realization of the goal to rid the world of an Armenian nation.
The Human Rights Ombudsman's Office is one of the institutions of the Artsakh Republic that carried out during the war and today continues to carry out the work of recording the widespread human rights violations and the criminal policy of Azerbaijan against the people of Artsakh. Our task and our mission is to document the devastating consequences of the Azerbaijani policy and to present to the world what Azerbaijan, backed by Turkey, is doing against our people. The Azerbaijani-Turkish aggression of 2020 was the continuation of the Armenian Genocide. First of all, the goal of the Armenian Genocide and the goal of Azerbaijani-Turkish aggression were the same: to erase Armenia and to erase Artsakh from the map, and to deprive Armenian people of their homeland. Just like during the Armenian Genocide, we Armenians were deprived of our historical homeland. Today, Azerbaijan, backed by Turkey, is doing the same, trying to deprive Artsakh Armenians from our homeland. The ideology behind the Armenian Genocide and the Azerbaijani ideology behind the Azerbaijani-Turkish aggression of 2020 are also very similar. I would say the same. And they are focused on Armenophobia and hatred based on ethnic origin. Armenian identity was seen and perceived as a threat by Ottomans, just like it is perceived as a threat by Azerbaijanis. And in the Ottoman Empire, the Armenian anti-Armenian and Armenophobic policy was sponsored in a state level, just like today it is sponsored in the state level by Azerbaijan. For almost 30 years, Azerbaijani authorities were and continue to implement an Armenophobic policy, nourishing the society with anti-Armenian propaganda.
The challenges faced by Armenians at the outset of the last century still exist today. Azerbaijan's use of internationally condemned and prohibited weapons, their desecration of historical monuments and places of worship, their treatment of Armenian prisoners, and their general Armenophobic policies are fueling their campaign to ethnically cleanse Artsakh of its Armenian people. This campaign has deprived Nagorno-Karabakh's indigenous Armenians of their legitimate right to live in their families' homes, while forcing them to suffer what are unavoidable losses. They have been bombarded with missile attacks, cluster munitions, Syrian mercenaries, public executions of illegally detained Armenian prisoner of wars, and the killing of innocent Armenian people, whose only crime in the eyes of Azerbaijan was the exercising of their human right to self-determination.
All our reports depicted the real situation on the ground. They included the evidences about the crimes such as deliberate and indiscriminate attacks on the civilian settlements, civilian infrastructure, houses, hospitals, schools, kindergartens, water and gas pipelines, mutilation, torture, and inhuman treatment of our prisoners of war, civilian population, and many other crimes. The policy of Azerbaijan has not been changed since the establishment of ceasefire. Azerbaijan's actions after the ceasefire demonstrate that Baku continues to adhere to a consistent, systematic and coordinated policy aimed at keeping the population of Artsakh in a constant terror and fear and creating unbearable conditions for the people of Artsakh. After the establishment of ceasefire, Azerbaijani side used every method to intimidate our population and to force people to leave their homes. At least 100 cases of the violation of ceasefire have been recorded by the law enforcement bodies of the Republic of Artsakh, and the Ombudsman's office each time made a statement presenting the details and consequences of those violations. As a result, 3 civilians and 30 servicemen were killed after the establishment of ceasefire, and a great property damage was caused to our civilian population.
Continued Azerbaijani intervention of civilian structures has disrupted the natural gas from Armenia, depriving nearly 120,000 native Armenians of heating and water, forcing schools and medical centres to close. Adverse weather conditions have presented an opportunity for the regime of Azerbaijan to create an atmosphere of humanitarian hopelessness for the Armenian population. Azeri intervention with gas supply against the backdrop of heightened tensions is no coincidence. It is the illegal continuation of the war against Armenian civilians outside the battlefield.
During this 1.5 years, they tried every method, blocking the communication, internet accessibility, cutting electricity supply, and many other. On March 8, the Azerbaijani side intentionally blew up the only gas pipeline coming from the Republic of Armenia to Artsakh. By this, depriving the population of Artsakh of gas supply, heating, hot water accessibility. At first, they blocked the access of the specialist of local gas supply company to the damaged part of the pipeline for implementing restoration works. Then they restored the operation of the gas pipeline, but 3 days later, they cut the supply again. The main goal of Azerbaijan was to keep the population without heating and hot water, and almost for 20 days, the whole population of Artsakh was deprived of gas supply in an abnormally cold weather conditions, which brought our population on the brink of a humanitarian catastrophe. Of course, the gas supply was restored, but it turned out that the Azerbaijani side installed a valve on the pipeline in order to be able to close it and to terrorize our population anytime they wish, and to leave us without gas supply.
In May 2021, with the world's eyes focused on the Middle East, Azeri seized Sev Lake, this time encroaching into the Sunnik province of sovereign Armenia, a clear infringement of territorial integrity by Azerbaijan. On the 24th of March, Azerbaijani military forcefully advanced in the Parukh region in Artsakh, using firearms and attack drones, grossly violating the November 2020 ceasefire agreement and resulting in the forced evacuation of 400 men and women and children from their homes, ethnic cleansing in the year 2022 before our very eyes.
Since February 24, started a psychological attack on the population of Khramort village of Askeran region. Using loudspeakers, they were urging the civilian population to stop agricultural works and to leave the territory. On March 8, the Azerbaijani side started to shell the civilian communities in Askeran and Martuni regions, using not only small arms but also mortars. And on March 24, the Azerbaijani side, grossly violating the ceasefire, the trilateral statement on ceasefire, invaded the territory of Artsakh and captured the village of Parukh and nearby height of Karagaluh. Today, the Azerbaijani troops remain on the height of Karagaluh, which is a strategical height for the whole Askeran region, because from there, Azerbaijani side is directly observing the life of people and threatens them with the use of force. These kind of actions were also used against the population of other communities, Taghavart, Karmir Shuka, even Stepanyan. The actions of Azerbaijan resulted in a new wave of displacement of people. Over 400 people were displaced from Parukh and Khramort villages. And today they are living in Stepanyan and other villages of the same region. Parukh and Khramort are the vivid examples of the policy of ethnic cleansing that is being implemented by the Azerbaijani authorities, backed by Turkey. And if before, in the past, we had to prove to the international community, to foreign observers, that the main goal of Azerbaijan is to implement ethnic cleansing, then it is more than vivid, and these two villages are the proof of that policy.
The ripples left in the wake of war continue to be deeply felt by the people of Artsakh. 5,000 dead and over 100,000 refugees, yet these numbers do not begin to scratch the surface of the deep trauma and pain suffered by the innocent Armenian population of Artsakh. An entire generation of young men wiped from the pages of history. Families torn apart and forced to evacuate the homes that have been passed down through generations. On the front line, fathers, sons, brothers, defending their ancient homeland, their families not knowing whether or not they will return home, not knowing whether their lives will be changed forever. The atrocities witnessed by our ancestors, passed down through generations, are now unfolding and have become the reality of men, women and children of Artsakh. With this conflict unresolved and ongoing sporadic skirmishes, the only casualties of this unprovoked war continue to be the people of Artsakh.
The highest year, if any Mujuarchka, Lochtega Hunteras, in Nasner Kutivine de Kalesti, Lochel Rivtanere Varvatsaler, Henk Hohan Yerem Kalatuseka, Mingelet Henk Hohan, Uras Hohet Nironomela, Azerbaijan, and Pin Derdan Tuskam, Uras Hotshaber. Okay, it. Termaila Teraspanutun, Roverchkan has a sick, me Erguya Cantani Kamakinam, Gorchon Canon Bustonemo Gorchka, Tahinchavan Paralakan at the Trubidum. Kanyana where Ariva Chichanaka had Nana in Kesek Tornado Elkerlanch, which we go sank. Kerlana Kaniche. Che, Hohaka, Hoha Barka. Che, which Manka party, which called, which me pay. And I mean Erguya Cantani Kamakinam. Che, Manama Manam. Ha, at when me grain, Tampanchanam, when the Rangish crack chitter. When the Yeshi come, Karokulohan, the child. Escarvis in Asnerco TV seto, Minuchtonason and Tanica Prelis in Calais. Ela Lavan Calais, Xantavacan, Exanti over Carrevas seats. Նարդար լուխտեղա հանտարենք։ Մի քանի հոգի բեժինց եկալ նանկելի դուս եկալ։
Ձեր կարծիքով ինչ է տինտիան։
Որպես անին ցեղասպանություն են։ Ոզմն հայերեն կոտորացին, ոզմն հայերեն սպանացին։ Ոզմն չեն հայը էս գերգրին իրես մկային ախե, մուկույանցին չքան։ Թոնքյան հետ ապրի ես ինձ հետ ապրիմ։
In 2020, we witnessed the international community's deafening silence during the Artsakh war. Despite public appeals to the international community to condemn war crimes and unprovoked attacks by Azerbaijan, the world remained silent. What we expect from Australia is to stop both-sidism, to publicly condemn Azerbaijan as the aggressor, and to provide aid like she has to Ukraine, Lebanon, and many others.
The international community was silent when Armenians were being killed in Ottoman Empire during 1950 Armenian Genocide. Even today, Armenians are struggling to reach international recognition of the Armenian Genocide. The same silence we faced during the Azerbaijani-Turkish aggression of 2020. And today, we are facing the same silence. And I understand that human rights agenda is very much subjugated to the political and geopolitical interests of the states, but as a human rights defender, as an ombudsman, I do believe that human rights must be universal and all human beings of the world must be guaranteed with the same rights.
As history continues to repeat itself in the Republic of Artsakh, Armenians pledge to stand with the people of Artsakh and the 1.5 million Armenian genocide victims, to raise their concerns, be their voices, be their advocates in the international arena, and defend the soil we call home.